I think I blew this case wide open. Not only have I put some new puzzle pieces together, but I've also found flaws in my own logic and reasoning that now that I've realized them, the ever-expanding case we have against eomm grows past the point I ever envisioned it would. I've located a pretty significant inconsistency in regards to Call of Duty's attitude towards their own matchmaking. But more specifically, I've noticed that we attack the wrong argument, and as a result, Activision goes along with it and attacks that argument as well. For those of you who don't know, this logical fallacy is called a straw man argument. It's basically refuting or defending a false position that's not actually in question, while simultaneously failing to address the actual issue. That led me to a question that I thought I'd never ask. What if the Call of Duty community is attacking the wrong point? We constantly complain about eomm, and I constantly can break down and expose their matchmaking intel research paper for what they are: a glorified explanation for an engagement-based system that manipulates results and in-game parameters that extends far beyond matchmaking. But the way Activision argues for this system is a little bit questionable. They say two things that raise a little bit of suspicion from me, not just because they're untrue, but because they don't reflect any kind of real findings. There are two sections that made me reread them again because they give away something that nobody has really noticed yet. These are both excerpts from their newest matchmaking intel paper. This paragraph right here explains in their terms why they won't loosen the skill consideration for matchmaking. They basically say that the best players will just stomp the bad players, and then everyone will leave except for the good players, and then it'll be nothing but them, and it'll be sweaty anyways. And then this part from the Q&A at the end of the article, basically them answering, has Call of Duty considered launching a multiplayer playlist that doesn't use skill? To which they reply, only high skill players would play it. So both of these passages describe the same core idea. The idea that if a skill measurement was removed from matchmaking, numbers show that the mid to low skill players would all leave, and high skill players would be all that remained. It's a clever and well-formulated argument, and could gaslight someone into believing it if they take these findings at face value and don't really think about them. However, there's one major flaw with this study that basically invalidates these findings. First off, it's not a long-term study, and rather it showcases short-term results over a limited period of time. It's not like these findings were tracked over the course of years. They were tracked over, at maximum, a few months, and only after the player base complained. Further, Activision is obviously biased, as you can't honestly conduct studies with integrity where, if the results turned out to be negative, it would hurt your business. So these are just two reasons not to trust this data at all, if you look at it from a super basic statistics lens. The third and final reason is that with an eomm system as obtrusive and overbearing as COD's, players have been conditioned to be used to this system, which yields mostly positive results for any players that are mediocre or below average, as it helps them play well in a protected bracket where they won't get beaten by anyone significantly better than them. So when the results become different because the clearly tailored results from earlier are now gone because matches become legitimately organic without an engagement-based system, we obviously will get lower skilled players leaving because they originally thought they were much better than they actually are. And if players don't have enough time to play and get way better, they'll quit because improvement looks too daunting. Hence, protected lobbies for casual players. So these findings are not foundationally stable in the way they were obtained, because they were too short-term and obviously biased, but they were also expected at first because of how eomm has conditioned the lesser skilled players of the COD fanbase. But I've been thinking, Activision's ultimate goal is to make as much money as humanly possible. And when you're trying to do that with a very popular and accessible market like gaming that is also fully based in a digital world where nothing you buy within a game is physical, in order to make the most money possible, you have to do some kind of manipulation of the human brain using what happens in the game as leverage. But here's the thing. What if it was never about player retention? What if it was never truly about engagement? Think about it. Player retention is great, but when it boils down to it, players simply logging on and playing the game doesn't make Activision any money, at least after the $70 is spent on the actual game. Player retention in and of itself doesn't actually get Activision any money at all. So what makes Activision money after everything is said and done with the purchase of the game? You guessed it, microtransactions. And this is where the straw man argument kicks in. Call of Duty's matchmaking isn't about player retention. It's about selling microtransactions. Every system in place is about selling microtransactions, either COD points, the Black Cell Battle Pass, or skins that have to be bought with real money, not COD points. Simply keeping players playing the game doesn't inherently guarantee the purchase of microtransactions. Keeping players on the game certainly raises the chances of the purchase of microtransactions, but it doesn't guarantee it. But this is the missing piece that we've been searching for so long. It explains every inconsistency that I've heard about in my comments and in conversations with other players and what I've experienced in the game. Because obviously, I don't buy skins in COD, but I'm also not engaged in the game. The algorithm is actively working against me, it seems, and a lot of you guys as well. But in a system that is designed to sell microtransactions, it would clearly prioritize the satisfaction of a player that is shown to be inclined to purchase microtransactions, rather than a player that doesn't. This is a pretty complex explanation and borderline conspiratorial, but I'll do my best to lay my cards fully on the table here. Let's take a good player, top 10%. His skills are on point. However, he refuses to buy microtransactions. He's never touched COD points, never touched skins, and never touched the battle pass. However, he's still a great player. Is this player of any use to Activision whatsoever? No. He can't be matched against worse players while wearing a skin so he can advertise it, and keep in mind, this is a method described in an Activision created patent, so they use it, and he can't be given a satisfying experience in order to get him more hooked on the game to buy more skins, because it's pretty obvious that his behavioral pattern suggests he refuses to buy microtransactions. So there's no use in trying to satisfy him. But because he isn't helping the ecosystem at all in their money-making scope, aka he isn't buying microtransactions or convincing anyone else to buy them, he is being placed in a group of players that are also similar, or perhaps he's placed against players with microtransactions and then forced to lose to them, or something like that. Now, let's take a top 10% player that's shown to buy microtransactions within the game. Is he of use to Activision's money-making goal? Of course. He's shown to buy skins, and he will use said skins in order to advertise them to other players. Now, which player will probably be rewarded and catered towards more? Obviously, the top 10% player that purchases skins, because if he gets to play well, he'll probably buy more skins and stay hooked on the game, and the players that get beaten by him will be that much more inclined to buy skins. When compared to somebody who refuses to buy skins, he's obviously much more reliable to cater towards. Again, an Activision-owned patent shows that the matchmaking will use better players to market skins in-game by allowing them to match with players that are likely going to be influenced into buying whatever skin they're using, because it creates the illusion that skins somehow make a player better. The patent's right here, and you can read it if you want. But this may explain why professional players who buy tons of skins seem to have good lobbies. Activision has said there isn't a whitelist, but what if it's the matchmaking just catering towards them? I mean, they are at least top 10% players. They're nasty at the game. They have been for years. So what gives? What makes their experience different from mine is that they buy skins. We can also apply this to lesser skilled players as well. This can also explain why, even though some of the time you feel like you're not that good, you're not getting handed free 1KDs all the time. If we take a bad player, maybe bottom 20%, that doesn't buy skins at all and is shown not to spend money on the game, they're of no use to the money-making scheme either. So within the game, they're simply tossed to the wolves and made to play in unprotected lobbies where better players with bundle skins can stomp on them. But let's take a bottom 20% player that does buy skins. Creating a false sense of security by putting them in protected lobbies against players they can actually compete against, allowing them to keep enjoying the game at their casual level, will undoubtedly lead them to at least considering purchasing another microtransaction within the game. Why satisfy a player that doesn't buy skins over a player that actually does if your interest is to make money? One helps your cause and the other doesn't. Prioritizing the satisfaction of players that are actually statistically shown to help your business in its money-making endeavor is clearly the best option for making the most money possible. So it's not about keeping every single player engaged. Clearly, that's not the case, because if keeping everyone satisfied was the goal, then we wouldn't see so many players complaining about the state of the last 5 COD titles, or complaining about the matchmaking. The matchmaking screws a lot of people, but it also keeps a lot of people playing. This is interesting. So we know it's not designed exactly towards engagement, and this is a big flaw in my reasoning recently. There's a target demographic that has to be catered to, and all this time, it wasn't just the casual players. Call of Duty doesn't cater to casuals. Call of Duty caters to the players who buy microtransactions, and to the players who don't, they try as hard as possible to scare the good players away so they don't ruin the experience of a worse player that does buy skins, so they won't leave and keep buying skins, and they'll try as hard as possible to convince worse players who don't buy skins that skins make you better. Instead of just letting players that aren't making them any money just sit there and enjoy the game, they'll either try as hard as possible to make them quit the game, or to convince them to somehow start buying skins. But what do I believe to be the most definitive proof for all of this? XDefiant. Call of Duty was clearly scared of XDefiant's success. After all, Call of Duty changed their title Gulf War, which was a clear sequel to Cold War. I mean, come on, look at the gameplay that leaked. It is a clear sequel, but they changed the name to Black Ops 6 to bait the nostalgia on the classic numerical Black Ops name. And the Black Ops 6 trailer came out a day after XDefiant released, and one other major point that everyone overlooked will blow your mind. Based on these excerpts from the article, Call of Duty thinks that having no skill matching in a game will ultimately scare away everyone except for high skill players, which will then make the game environment miserable anyways. This being said, if they believe that this is the case and no skill-based matchmaking kills a game, then why were they trying to interfere with XDefiant's hype? If Call of Duty genuinely thinks no SBM will make a game die, why contest a clearly doomed title? Well, it's clearly because they're scared of XDefiant taking away players, because it's competition. But furthermore, it reveals that Activision really doesn't think that having no skill matching kills a game. Instead, using the matchmaking that they use is just simply a way to make as much money as possible by convincing players of every demographic to buy skins, and by scaring away those who don't, or convincing those who don't. XDefiant's main selling point was no sbmm after all. So I'll say it again. If Activision really thinks having no skill-based matchmaking kills a game, why on earth would you change your game's IP, drop teasers and trailers to interfere with the hype, and basically throw everything you have at a game with no skill-based matchmaking as its main selling point if that game is ultimately doomed anyways? It's because they don't really think that having no skill matching kills a game. They're attacking the wrong position in all of their articles. It's a straw man argument. They have the data to quote-unquote defend their false position. In reality, it's all about money, and they'll never admit it. But all we have to do is remember, they're a corporation. All they have to do is defend their system from a quote-unquote player's best interest perspective and gaslight us into thinking that retention is number one, not money from microtransactions. They're using the retention and engagement argument as a way to disguise the fact that all of their matchmaking is based around microtransactions. They're afraid of a game like XDefiant stealing players away because it's giving them everything that they want in regards to matchmaking and gameplay, and it's because they do think that no skill matching works. But in the context of COD, it won't make them the most money, so they'll always contest it and they'll never change. The only reason they keep the matchmaking and it will never change is not because it's for player retention, it's because it's for selling microtransactions. That's the missing piece that I couldn't see before. But with XDefiant's launch and success, it's abundantly clear. Call of Duty was afraid of that game having no skill matching, but they claim that no skill matching will kill a game. But no skill matching actually works and satisfies players. COD's matchmaking is rigged to get you to buy microtransactions. So if they remove that system, it means they won't sell as many microtransactions and lose money because of it. However, in that gain of money by using eomm to sell microtransactions, the game loses all of its integrity and becomes not worth playing at all, as it becomes a microtransaction simulator that's no better than Clash of Clans. So their argument against no skill matching in a game is completely inconsistent because they were afraid of a game without it, even though they claim that it'll make a game fail based on data. That's very odd. Furthermore, they attack the wrong point. They never talk about money, they only talk about player retention. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to make the most money possible, it's not about retention. They're not looking to engage or retain players that don't buy microtransactions. They're either looking to advertise to them or to get them the heck out of the ecosystem so that they can prioritize selling other players microtransactions that are more likely to buy them. I think we cracked this case open. So their plan is address the community's concerns, argue a straw man about player retention that diverts focus away from microtransaction-based matchmaking, contest the release of XDefiant, keep on throwing us off with research papers supporting that straw man while their system goes undetected and uncontested. But hey, call me a conspiracy theorist all you want, but it's been all about microtransactions since the loot boxes in Advanced Warfare. But that's all I got for now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm Prime Pete. Take it easy.